Yo, what is up guys, your boy IzuKage here with a new what if, and this what if is what if Naruto was a Saiyan. So this series has been suggested more times than I can even count, and I think it's about time that I did it, so I hope you all going to enjoy the what if.
Talk to me nice, look, Birth, dirty, Birth, brilliant. I'm attached, big body Benz, I got scope on the gun, get in like a Mac. I can't fuck with these hoes, these bitches is true. I'm got niggas attached.
So we start this what if off on planet Vegeta, and a major difference in this is that Kakarot will have two brothers instead of one, and the other brother being Naruto. So Bardock, being a low-class Saiyan himself, wasn't expected to produce some strong offspring, so Goku's power level is low, like close to the bottom of all low-class Saiyan, while his brother, whose name will still be Naruto since most of the Saiyans we know, their Saiyan names are puns of different foods, mostly vegetables like Kakarot is carrot, Raditz, radish, you get the point. And Naruto is already named after a food. It's mostly called Narutomaki. Well, I don't live in Japan, so I don't know what it's mostly called, but it says Narutomaki or Naruto. So the name will stay the same. When Naruto is getting his power level scanned as a baby, his levels are incredibly low actually. There has been no Saiyan with such a low power level at birth. If there was a tier below low class Saiyan, Naruto would be put into that tier. But as we know, Bardock, he began having these premonitions of planet Vegeta's impending doom. So after a bit of back and forth with Gine, Bardock convinced her to send their two youngest to the planet Earth, where hopefully they stay off the Frieza Force's radar and can live on. So they put them into pods and carry them out into an area on planet Vegeta where no one resides there. It's just this rocky area and it's the dead of night. So after their goodbyes, Gine wishes her two boys off, so she turns to Bardock and says, "I hope you aren't wrong about this." So both pods start their course to Earth, and the journey, well, there's no stated time of how long this would take, but I would say since Kakarot survived the journey and we know his appetite is huge, it doesn't take forever. So maybe put it on their 6 months. So halfway into their journey, Naruto's pod experiences some technical malfunction, and because of this, it doesn't avoid an asteroid right in front of it, and Naruto has a head-on collision. And this knocks the pod off course and sends it towards the edge of Universe 7. And while Goku continues on his journey, everything goes the same with him. He arrives on Earth. All the events of canon happen, but Naruto, he is sent, well, as I said, to the edge of the universe, and this would take another 6 months to reach it, and when Naruto does, the pod just disappears. Because there was nothing ever stated about what would happen if you had reached the edge. So Naruto gets transported to a different universe, not 6, 7, or however many universes there are. He gets transported to the Naruto universe. So now with Naruto entering this universe, stuff is gonna be a bit weird, like what would happen to Kushina's child and different things like that. But you guys forget that I'm the writer of this story. So Kushina just doesn't have a child. She can't. After multiple attempts, the only assumption that Kushina could come up with is that the Nine-Tails is interfering with her somehow in not being able to have a child, but her and Minato just had to live with that reality. So now Obito, this all would happen but in a different way. Instead of catching her as soon as she's give birth to Naruto, Obito would kidnap Kushina while she's in her sleep, like at night. So he uses her Kamui and transports her to the extraction area, and this all will go normally. The only difference is it would take a longer amount of time for Obito to start the extraction process, since, you know, giving birth to Naruto, it did loosen it, so it would take a lot more time. So Minato, he doesn't just sit around and just wait until it's extracted. because Obito still has the same fight with Minato, so that all goes relatively the same. And then the Nine Tails is released onto the village and it starts destroying everything. So meanwhile all of this is happening, the pod that Naruto arrived in, it lands on the outskirts of the leaf, and as we all know, this all is happening in the night, and that means the moon is out. And if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure I've seen pictures where in the Ninetales attack it is a full moon. So when Naruto pods open and he sees the full moon, he turns into his Ozaru form, the massive ape. And let me just get this out of the way from now because I just spent like half an hour researching this. So I'm going to put the Ozaru, Naruto's Ozaru form at around the size of Gamabunta. So that would be like 20-30 meters. So he's not comparing to Kurama, who is around 100 meters. And the reason this was so hard is because these anime drawers, whoever draws these shows, they are not consistent at all. It varies from around 25 to 600 meters, so that's the type of inconsistencies I'm talking about. But with that out of the way, let's just get back into this. So Naruto turns into this great ape just outside of the village, and people inside the village are seeing Naruto as well because he's pretty close. He's just right outside of the village walls. And Naruto, he's coming towards Kurama. And he's looking for a fight, but Naruto doesn't know what to expect. Well, I shouldn't be saying Naruto because he is not at all in control. So Naruto, he gets closer to the village, and Kurama, he sets his eyes onto this ape or whatever it wants to be called. So Minato, he's finished up with Obito. He just fought him and he came back to come deal with the Ninetales, but something Minato wasn't planning for is this massive ape coming towards the village. So Minato, he's looking at this great ape and he's thinking maybe it's someone summoning. They're trying to attack the village as well. So Minato, he has to deal with both these enemies. But before he could do anything, it looks like Kurama and Naruto's Ozaru form are gonna go head to head. So Naruto, he runs at Kurama trying to body slam him into the ground, but Kurama's nails and his reach are far superior to Naruto's Ozaru form. So Kurama uses his claws and swipes at Naruto's Ozaru form, cutting into his fur and the skin lying under it, and Naruto starts to bleed from this. The Ozaru Naruto starts to get overwhelmed when Kurama rushed the ape and knocks it across the village, falling onto some houses, and Kurama just did this with one of its tails. So Ozaru Naruto, he's exhausted and barely able to move, but he manages to get up, and though exhausted, he opens up his mouth and a ball of ki begins to form. And seeing this, Kurama responded, opening its mouth, and black spheres begin collecting together into one massive ball. And both moves shoot towards each other and collide, and from the shockwave of energy from this, it pushed both of them back and destroyed some houses in the process. And they just fought against each other but eventually exploded, and luckily it was more in the air, so it didn't do much damage to the village surrounding it. But before Kurama could continue his assault, adamantine chains began wrapping around its legs and its tails, dropping the beast to the ground, making it unable to move. And when Minato started looking around for where the summoning beast was, it just disappeared, and Minato was confused, but he had greater things to deal with, and this being, well, the Ninetales. So while Kushina was struggling to keep the Ninetales down, she was just buying a little time for Minato. He rushed over to Hiruzen because he doesn't know what to do with the beast. But on his way there, he sees a baby on the ground without any clothes, and Minato quickly picked up the child before that summoning came back. And Minato looked at this child and his hair was completely black and he had a tail? But then Hiruzen came and his Ombu squad appeared unseen and sees this child he's holding, but there are greater things to deal with. Hiruzen asks Minato, what do you plan to do with the Ninetales? For this, I was gonna leave it up to you guys to choose who gets the Ninetales, but I'm just gonna give it to Naruto because, well, why not? So Minato, he decides to seal the Ninetales within this child. Why? Don't ask, my brain hurts enough. So yeah, Minato rushes back to Kushina, who is still struggling to keep the Nine Tails down. So quickly, Minato does the hand signs for the Reaper Death Seal and seals the Nine Tails within Naruto in exchange for his soul. And of course, because the beast was extracted from Kushina, she soon dies after. So Hiruzen gets to Naruto and he decides to raise this child, and he actually gives Naruto a good upbringing for once, since Hiruzen has no reason to believe that Naruto even played a small part in his wife's death. So for 2 years, Naruto has just been living in Hiruzen's house, and at this point he's still like a baby, and he's growing in sort of stages, like how Goku went from this small child to looking like an adult basically. Naruto would be growing in phases. Hiruzen wouldn't see like a constant growth like a regular person. So for these 2 years, Naruto is still, he looks like a toddler. So one day, Hiruzen is in his house, which is like right behind the Hokage mansion, and he takes Naruto out to play for once, because Naruto, most of the times, he would just be inside. Either Hiruzen or Asuma would be taking care of him. So Hiruzen, he wants Naruto to go out and like meet other people his age. So they get to the public playground in the Leaf Village, and everyone, they're talking to Naruto, they're getting along. And while they were playing, Shikamaru stops and asks Naruto, "Why do you have a tail?" And Naruto looks back and sees his tail waving around and just shrugs. "I was born with it, I guess." So Shikamaru, still confused, grabs onto Naruto's tail because, he wants to know more about it. But Naruto freezes and he loses like all his strength almost immediately and falls over looking like he passed out. And Hiruzen, seeing this, he rushed over to Naruto to make sure he was alright. And Shikamaru, he's scared. He thought he did something like wrong. But Hiruzen, he's assuring Shikamaru that, he'll be okay. Or, well, at least he thinks. So Hiruzen begins to walk back home, and by now it's turned to nighttime, and Naruto starts waking up, and Hiruzen looks at Naruto and smiles, and he says, "Glad you're awake, we're going back home." And Naruto just nods and lays his head into Hiruzen's arms. But Naruto, he looks up into the sky, and what he sees is the full moon in all of its glory. And you all know what that means. Naruto gets entranced by the moon, and his hair starts growing on his arms, and he starts growing in size. Hiruzen, he's frightened, like he drops Naruto and backs up and watch as he turns into this massive ape, his Ozaru form. And Hiruzen said, "What the? Naruto is that thing?" And because he's remembering 2 years ago in the Nine Tails attack when he first saw the ape. Hiruzen had to act quickly, and he said, "Summoning Jutsu, come forth, Monkey King Enma." And from a massive cloud of smoke came out the Monkey King, and he sees Ozaru Naruto and says, "Dad, is that you?" But Hiruzen said, "Enma, focus, Adamantian Noi." So Enma transforms into this massive adamantium pole, and Hiruzen grabs it, and before Ozaru Naruto could destroy anything, Hiruzen said, "Extend!" And the pole he was holding shot out into the Ozaru's chest and pushed him out of the village and into the forest surrounding it. So Hiruzen, he ran to make sure that, nothing was destroyed, and he's looking at this massive ape, and something is a bit different from the first time that he saw it. Because the first time, the ape, it was going like wild, like it was destroying everything around it. But now it seems to have some semblance of consciousness. So what I'm doing right here is because since Naruto is a bit older, he has a bit more control over his Ozaru form because, well, yeah, Saiyans can control that form. So I'm having it to where Naruto, he doesn't want to attack anything around it because he's grown a connection to the village. So Naruto, he's just standing still trying to fight off these urges he has to just completely rip apart everything. So Hiruzen is just watching the ape just standing there doing nothing. And soon enough, his Ombu come to his side and said, "It's this thing again. What should we do, Hokage?" And Hiruzen says, "Well, we'll just see what happens next," because, he has no plan. Well, he does have a plan to destroy this thing, but it's Naruto. He knows it's Naruto, so he doesn't want to go overboard with it. So he's watching, and after an hour of the ape just standing there, it finally begins to shrink down back into Naruto, like baby Naruto. So Hiruzen, he jumps over to where he saw Naruto shrink down at, and then he picks him up and he's completely passed out. So Hiruzen, he's beginning to think, what even is Naruto? I mean, he knows having a tail isn't necessarily normal, but where is he from? Like, does he have any parents? Because the only thing tying him to a clan relay is his black hair, and even when he went to the Uchihas, they had no idea who Naruto was. So we fast forward 4 years and Naruto is 6 years old, and it's early in the morning and Naruto rushes over to Hiruzen's room, and imagine that scene where Boruto, when he jumps onto Naruto to wake him up, that's exactly what Naruto does. He does the same thing to Hiruzen, and Hiruzen woke up holding his stomach in pain, and he looks at Naruto and said, "Are you trying to kill me?" So Naruto, he laughs but says, "It's my birthday," and Hiruzen is like, "Okay, and Naruto said, "Remember what you said? When I turn 6, you'll teach me taijutsu?" And Hiruzen is like, "Oh, yeah, about that. I'm having a meeting with the elders, so it can wait until I'm back." And Naruto runs to the doorway and says, "I'm not letting you pass." And Hiruzen, at this point, he's over this. Like, Naruto woke him up, he's tired, and he just wants to go and do his job. So he says, "I'm not playing any games, get out of the way." And Hiruzen goes to push Naruto aside, but Naruto grabs his arm and flips Hiruzen, like throwing him down onto his back. And Hiruzen gasped because of the amount of air that exited his lungs. And Hiruzen started breathing heavily and said, "What was that?" He gets up and looks at Naruto and says, "What did you do?" And Naruto shrugged and said, "I saw some people training and I was doing the same thing they did." And Hiruzen was still confused because it felt like someone way stronger than Naruto flipped him, not some kid. And Hiruzen said, "You know what? I'll have Danzo sit in the meeting for me. We can train." So Naruto got all excited and started cheering, and Hiruzen had to quiet him down before he woke Konohamaru up. So the two went to the back of the house where there is a massive training ground, and Hiruzen was across from Naruto, and he started to show him some of the basic techniques like some academy students would be taught. But Naruto is getting bored because it's like the basics, like forms, nothing flashy or super cool. So Naruto, he asks Hiruzen, "When are we gonna learn the cool stuff I see your friends doing?" And Hiruzen, he raises an eyebrow at this and is like, "My friends? What?" But then he realized Naruto might be talking about his Ombu since he trains them in this same training ground. So Hiruzen laughs a bit and says, "Alright Naruto." So he does a few hand signs and said, "Summoning Jutsu." And Hiruzen summons 5 scrolls, each of them with some of his own taijutsu techniques he written in them. So he hands them off to Naruto and says, "I'll see how you fare with these." And he goes off to the Hokage mansion. So Naruto, he returns to his room and starts practicing everything in these scrolls. Meanwhile, Hiruzen, he goes to the Hokage mansion, and when he gets there, he sees Danzo is just walking out of the meeting, and Danzo asks, "What kept you waiting?" And Hiruzen just began saying how Naruto was pestering him about teaching him taijutsu. So Danzo never actually asked, and he was a bit curious and says, "Why do you even care about that kid anyways? He isn't related to you." And Hiruzen said, "Yeah, I know, but he's also the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki." And Danzo is like, "Hold the phone, now give it back to me. You never said anything about him being the Jinchuriki." Like, what? And Hiruzen shrugs and walks over to his desk and says, "Well, you never asked." And a lot of things begin running through Danzo's mind, and he just says, "Okay," and walks out. Finally, he has something against Hiruzen, something he can try to use to get the role of the Hokage from Hiruzen. So Danzo had his root Ombu go around to spread these rumors about Naruto being the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki, and most didn't see a problem with it, especially since he's under Hiruzen's surveillance, but a few radical villagers wanted a bit of revenge since they believed Naruto was the actual Kyuubi and not just its Jinchuriki. So these villagers, which are a group of 3 men and a female villager, and they all in the dead of night try to go over to like Hirizen's house where he lives. And at this point, Naruto is the only one at home because Hirizen, he has a bunch of paperwork to do in the night, and Konohamaru and Asuma, who's his uncle, he went off to see Kurenai, so he brought Konohamaru with him because, well, Naruto couldn't take care of him by himself. So Naruto, he's at home still practicing these these taijutsu techniques, and he hears something outside, so he goes to check, and when he's looking around, he sees nothing except like the pitch black sky, and I mean, there's no one around. So Naruto, as he's turning around to go back inside, a rope like gets thrown around him, and somebody drags it, tightens it around Naruto's body, and this like traps his arms to his body, and then Naruto starts to get pulled across the ground into the forest, and Naruto, he's squirming around, he's trying to get loose because he can't see who is doing any of this. So at this point, Naruto, he's really scared, but he feels like whoever this is, he can take them because of the amount of effort he's been putting into learning some taijutsu. So when Naruto stops, they're in the middle of the forest, and someone lights a torch, and finally Naruto can get a good glimpse at everyone who is there, and he sees the 3 men and this female villager, and Naruto is asking, why did you all do this? What's the problem? And one of the men said, you're the problem. And then he takes out a kunai and stabs it into Naruto's legs, and he starts screaming out in pain and asking while tears are running down his eyes, like, why are you doing this? And Naruto gets, and one of the female stabs another kunai into his other leg, and Naruto, he's still so confused why they're doing this to him. They're basically torturing him out in the middle of nowhere. And Naruto, he's flailing around trying to grab onto something, but with his hands binded, he can't really do much. So Naruto, he tries to get up, but then the other villager just kicks him in the stomach, sending him back to the ground. And they start playing football with Naruto, taking turns kicking him, beating him around. And Naruto at this point, he's coughing up blood because they have hit some of his vital organs. But then the Nine Tails power starts to kick in and it heals Naruto. And because of this healing, and these blows are basically like almost lethal attacks because they start stabbing Naruto elsewhere. So Naruto, he's beginning to heal, and the kunais just shoot out of his body, and then they're like, what the hell is he? And then one of the older guys in the group said, what do you guys expect? Of course, he's a demon, he can heal, so we better finish this quickly. So they all go over to Naruto, ready to finish him off. But that's the point when this red aura starts to surround Naruto, and then it's like he's powering up or something. This aura pushes people away, and then Naruto screams and breaks through the rope he's in, cause Naruto just received a Zenkai boost. And with this boost, Naruto rushes over and uses some of his newly acquired taijutsu abilities to completely demolish this group of villagers because they have no fighting experience while Naruto has been training all day. So Naruto, he mops the floor with all of these villagers, and because of this sudden use of his energy, Naruto, he passes out for around an hour. But when he finally wakes up, he sees the destruction that he's caused. But in his mind, it's justified. I mean, they started it. So Naruto, with this, he returns to the Hokage, well, Hiruzen's house. And then he gets back to training because Naruto, he needs to prepare himself for anyone who is ever trying to do that again. So we fast forward 2 years and nobody has found or even tried looking for the bodies that have gone missing, those 4 villagers. So Naruto, he's really in the clear and he's about ready to start the academy. But unfortunately, that is where I'm going to be leaving this one off. This part was more of a lot of Naruto's backstory, and also I want you guys to tell me in the comments, should Naruto keep his tail? That's why I didn't have anything cut it off, because I wanted you guys to decide on that. So yeah, does Naruto keep it or does it get cut off? But yeah, if you guys like this part 1, like, and if you like my content in general, consider subscribing, and yeah, Discord link in the description and as always, and I'll see you guys in the next What If.